Good morning. Good morning. I know it's after the 4th of July week and nobody really wants to do this on Monday. Good morning. Yeah, there you go. That's the enthusiasm we want to have for the census. First of all, my name is Bud Williams. I'm a vice chair of redistricting for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we'll have individuals come up that will introduce themselves as they come forward. This is we think, a big day for the Valley in terms of gearing up for April 1st of 2020 when the official census starts. And we know that Mr. Trump in Washington is trying to do everything he can to suppress voters, suppress censuses and all that in terms of the citizens report. We know we want every vote to count in Massachusetts. We know we have a lot of students, we have a lot of seniors, we have a lot of renters, and we have a lot of immigrants. There's almost 6.9 million people in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we want to count every single last one of them. Be mindful, the last 3 out of 4 censuses we've done, we've lost a congressional seat. 3 out of the last 4. We do not want that to happen. So with that being said, we know it's going to be an online ballot. I think Mr. Chairman Paul Marks is going to speak to the state. We did some initiatives to put some money in to get people on the ground to be able to go, Jose Collado, the Urban League, go out and actually knock on doors. With that being said, I'm going to ask our distinguished Congressman, Chairman of Ways and Means, who we're so happy to be here, and he kind of gets it to bring greetings from the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. Congressman.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you. Thanks, buddy, and Mr. Mayor and the legislators that are here and other elected officials, how important this moment is. And singularly to acknowledge Paul Mark and Buddy Williams, because the task that they have in front of them means that they will play a disproportionate role in how the new design of our congressional seats are allocated. And when you ask, well, why is that significant? Because it is constitutionally provided. Every 10 years, since 1790, we've been asked to take what is called a snapshot of the American family. And the information that the Census Bureau collects, retrieves, and holds is startling. It's that important. It talks about income, it talks about different professions, it talks about the balance of gender and race and all of those issues that are so important, just so that we have it in front of us to analyze. And in this particular case, this is how noteworthy the work is of Paul and Buddy. And the mayor's presence here today is particularly important because the undercount frequently takes place in old cities. People are reluctant to volunteer this information. So here's why this is really important. 20 years ago, we lost a congressional seat to the state of Washington based upon the need for 35,000 more people. Now, my hunch is in Hampden County, you could find 35,000 more people. But the exacting nature of the count meant that Washington State received our congressional seat. I've talked to Bill Galvin, the Secretary of State, whose requirement is to give a full accounting of the number of people who reside in the Commonwealth, and he has indicated to me that counting the people who are underrepresented and underserved is really important. Now, are we in danger of losing a congressional seat this time around? No. But could we position ourselves for the future, because our population in Massachusetts, unlike most of New England, now grows? The question is, does it grow fast enough in terms of its relationship to what happens in the Southwest, what happens in California? And the last time around in the census with California, it was the first time, I believe, in 5 decades when they didn't pick up any congressional seats. So Texas still picked up seats. Florida picks up seats. We want to make sure that across the Northeast and particularly in New England, that we maintain that accuracy. Now, let me quote Justice Roberts, who, when asked about whether or not a citizenship line ought to be included in the census, the Chief Justice said, it appeared to him as though the question had been contrived. And the Constitution says enumeration. That's the issue, enumeration. A full head count of who lives here. And we want to make sure that those that might be disinclined or might be afraid, that they need to be counted as well. And I think that the Census Bureau, they do a great job on this information. And then these congressional seats are allocated based upon what the state legislature and the governor of those respective states decides to do. So there is enormous influence that goes well beyond just the one-year effort to secure a full picture of who resides where. And I'm encouraged that the mayor and Buddy and Paul and our state legislators would understand clearly why it's important to make sure that these districts are drawn accurately afterwards, but you can't draw the districts accurately afterwards until you have a full understanding of the head count. So thanks for doing this. This is really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. I want to acknowledge my Chief of Staff, Marlo Brown, who's with us. Thank you, Marlo. He was somewhere standing. And you'll acknowledge your staff, Paul, when you get up. They do a lot of work for us. They really make this job a lot easier. At the next time, we're going to bring a mayor of the city, Mayor Sarno.
Plain and simple, we have to show up to move up. And I really want to thank Congressman Neal, Mr. Chairman. Once a mayor, always the heart of the mayor. He realizes how important it is, took the time as he battles for us in Washington to be here. I want to thank Chairman Mark, and I want to thank Representative Buddy Williams and Representative Tizzato and Representative Gonzalez. I also want to thank all the organizations that have showed up on our invite, Secretary of State's office, our Census Bureau, which will be working together again, the community groups that are here, extremely important. Chairing my count committee is my commissioner, elections commissioner, Gladys Oyola. Her staff, they've done a tremendous job being very proactive in outreach. She'll co-chair with my chief of staff, Tom Ash, again, who drives an agenda and gets results, the importance of this. And it's great to see my former chief of staff, Denise Jordan. We're reeling her back in, too, with the SHA. But as the Congressman Neal, excuse me, alluded to, the count is extremely important. And I'll tell you why from a mayor's perspective. Springfield has always hovered around well over 150,000 population, 153 to 155. If we were ever to go below the 150,000 mark, that would be devastating when it comes to funding, specifically CDBG funding, which is a lifeline to urban mayors such as myself across America, and not only for youth development and housing development, job creation, business development. That is our lifeline. So it's important that everyone is counted. It is also important, Congressman Neal alluded to, again, we're not at any risk of losing a congressional seat, but not too long ago we did. And we want to make sure that our voices are heard in Washington, because if they're not heard, there'll be other people making the decisions here for the city of Springfield. And locally, we know best what decisions need to be made and where monetary assets and other assets need to be put for all our people, no matter what creed, color, or background, when it comes to education, when it comes to job creation, when it comes to youth development, when it comes to housing, when it comes to infrastructure. So it's important. And each and every one of you who are on the streets, I know you might not get a pat in the back all the time, but what you're doing is extremely essential, because it's every decade, every 10 years. And if we don't make sure that we get everyone counted here, we don't want to take that risk that Springfield will go below that 150,000 mark. So I really appreciate Chairman Mark and Representative Williams, who sits on this committee, and Representative Gonzalez and Tizzato that are here. And it's important that we have our people out there on the streets to explain to the individuals, because of the mass confusion that is being created on the federal level, not by Congressman Neal. Let me clarify that. To let them know to respond to this, because this is for the good of the city and for the good of themselves. So we have a broad-based coalition that we're putting together, whether it's our community groups, or whether it's our religious groups, whether it's our college groups, whether it's our veterans groups, and again, my election commissioner, Gladys Oyola, and my chief of staff, Tom Ash, will co-chair this moving forward. This is how important it is to have all the representatives here, the chairman of the State Legislation Committee on this, and they have the chairman of the House Ways and Means of our federal government to be here. Great importance, and we want to be proactive on this and get ahead of it ahead of time. So thank you to each and every one of you, and again, thank you to all the soldiers on the street. Yes. Thank you, because you are, we talk and pontificate. You're doing the work, and we want to make sure that we're able to back you up. So thank you again, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next individual is from Peru. When I heard he was from Peru, I was thinking across the Atlantic, but no, Peru, Massachusetts. He's the chairman of redistricting, and we're in the same offices together, and I've become a dear friend of mine. I've learned so much from him in terms of redistricting. I did the census in 2010, but sitting at the point of all this, it's really mind-boggling, and it's really an honor and a pleasure to be able to be the vice chair. So without further ado, the chairman of redistricting, Chairman Paul Marks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to Mayor Sarno for hosting us here today at City Hall. Thank you for Congressman Neal for being part of this event today. And thank you to my Vice Chairman, Bud Williams, for putting this all together. It means a lot, I think, that the chair and the vice chair of this committee, the redistricting committee, are actually from Western Massachusetts. Because when we look at some of the numbers, as I'm going to go through some of them a bit, we're the most in need of help, and we're the most in need of making sure that we count every single person. As Congressman Neal was mentioning, this was one of the most important things. The founders of America, was one of the first things they threw into the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. So right at the beginning, the actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall by law direct. That was one of the first things they were thinking about, is how are we actually going to be representative? So as redistricting chair, my thought is, what is the best way to protect the voice we have? Because it's the voice that we have here in Springfield for our representatives in Boston and for our members down in Congress. And we keep talking, it's been mentioned that in the past we've lost members, and it doesn't look like we're going to lose a member of Congress at this time, and the number of House representatives is always fixed at 160. But when you think about when we do lose a member, where are they going? And this time you're looking at 3 new members coming to Texas, 2 new members coming to Florida, a new member going to North Carolina, and a couple of other states that are going to get 1. But they're all mostly down in the Southwest, the southern part of the country. Meanwhile, here locally, New York State is probably going to lose 1, Rhode Island is probably going to lose 1, and that dilutes our voice. It dilutes the number of people fighting for us in Washington and potentially in Boston. But it also affects the Electoral College. It affects so many different things. So when we look at how the population, what the estimates are as of 2018, in Massachusetts, we estimate right now 6,902,149. That's over 5% growth. 5% growth is really good, again, for the state, because it means hopefully we won't lose a member. But those numbers are not as strong out here in Western Massachusetts. So in Congressional District 1, in Hampden County, we estimate we've only grown by 6,916 people, and that reflects only 1.5% growth. And in the city of Springfield itself, we estimate the growth is only 2,000 people, and that's 1.29%. So that is not keeping pace with the 5%. If you look at Suffolk County, the city of Boston alone has grown over 75,000 people. And the Suffolk County growth, which is Boston and 3 other cities right there, 11.8%. Congressional District 1, we estimate, might be down as many as 30,000 people. So it makes it that much more difficult for those of us who do represent you to be effectively advocating for you, because the more communities, the gentleman behind me, Rep. Tosado, Rep. Gonzalez, Rep. Williams, they all represent neighborhoods of the city and maybe some other area. I have 16 communities. Congressman Neal, how many do you have? How many towns do you have?
87.
87. So the more towns you add, the more select boards, the more, and he knew it, he got the question right. The more you add, the more difficult it is for the people themselves to have access to your voice, and that's what we don't want. So we want to make sure that none of these changes are reflected because we didn't take the time to count every single person. So in Massachusetts, our liaison to the U.S. Census is Secretary Galvin, and to support him in the House budget, we were able to put in $2.5 million that is going to be available for grant programs for local community outreach efforts to help support these efforts. And then we also put in $2.75 million for technical and data assistance that goes through the University of Massachusetts. The Secretary has emphasized that this might be the most difficult census he's taken part of, and this is his third time. So I thank everyone for being here, for taking the time, and for all the work you're going to do between now and a year from now. And again, thanks to your efforts, thanks to the efforts of everybody up here on this stage, hopefully we will get an accurate count, and we will be able to keep as much of a voice as possible here locally. Thank you. Oh. And the Vice Chairman wants me to recognize Chris Capucci, our Research Director, Amanda, our Research Analyst, and Adrian, our wonderful intern. Thank you.
Yeah, they're very important people, Paul. You don't want me doing the research, do you? As Mr. Chairman had said, it's very important, and as I talked to Jose Claudio and Denise Jordan and Leo from the Neighborhood Housing Services, the state provided that $2.5 million so we can get organizations into the street to actually physically go out and knock on doors. They're going to be grants to the Secretary of State's office. So that was very important, and I want to thank Chairman Marks for really leading the effort on that, because when it started out, it wasn't that much. But through his efforts, we were able to boost it up, hopefully. Might be able to add some more to that. The next individual was head of the Black Latino Caucus, and we're in his district, I believe. Rep. Gonzalez.
Thank you, buddy. And to Chairman Mark, who comes from Peru, thank you for putting this event together. Chairman Mark did not state that in Peru there's 850 people, and they lost 5 last census. So we got to make sure we get that census count out there. But again, I think the congressman mentioned that 35,000 people, that's what it took for us to lose a congressional district. Sink that, let that sink in. And I would suspect that 20,000, if not more of those, were Puerto Rican, Latinos, people that speak a different language, immigrants. So that's a big population. And I'm going to say this, I'm mad as hell because we, our community, members of our community, need to step up and step out and make sure we get our people counted, because that's where it's at. We have to get our people counted. The mayor, thank you very much. I think I spoke to you around 8 months ago when I called in and I said about the census count and what role I can play, if any. And I look forward to be working with you on this endeavor, and I congratulate you on Tommy Ash and Gladys Oyola, a Latina woman that speaks the languages of many of the people that were undercounted. That's a great announcement to make, and I'm looking forward to be working with you, Gladys, and thank you very much for the hard work you're doing on our election time here too, also. and let me just end by saying that haz tu voto contar, porque el desarrollo de nuestra educación, nuestro desarrollo económico y la salud de nuestra comunidad cuenta contigo. Haz tu voto contar. Make your vote count. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos. We're going to have Rep. Jose Tosado, who plays a big role in the city of Springfield. I served in the city council with him years ago, but his heart is in the city of Springfield. Rep. Tosado.
Thank you. Thanks, Bud. Wow, I feel like I'm following Beto O'Rourke over here. But that's okay. Seriously, I just want to commend Chairman Marks, my colleagues, and Vice Chairman Williams for putting this event together so early in the game. It shows how important this initiative is, and obviously Mayor, my good friend Mayor Dominic Sarno for hosting this, and from God's sake, Congressman Richard Neal, Chairman of Ways and Means, could be anywhere, many important things to do. He's here today because he represents his community and his district each and every day. Just very briefly, because I probably can't add much to all the good things that have already been said, we know the importance firsthand of counting each and every individual. And as Chairman of the Black and Latino Caucus said, Representative Gonzalez, many of the people who are affected by this, by the undercounts, are people of color, and most of them who have language barriers, and a lot, frankly, Latino. And I believe that in many cases that's an intentional thing that happens, and I believe that our current administration in Washington is also pushing in that direction by this unconscionable question to basically screen people out. And as Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. So while this affects the number of folks that we have in Congress, it also affects each locality. It affects specifically the city of Springfield, where we have so many people who fly below the radar, and we need to make sure that they are counted, because the way it affects the city is while those numbers may now be up there, we may lose numbers. We're not losing the people; they're still here. The city depends on that information in order for them to do planning, to develop needed services, and to move our economy forward by bringing in new citizens. So it's of vital importance that each and every one of us does our job to make sure that people are indeed counted, and because who stands to lose is us as a local community. So again, thank you very much, and thanks for putting this together. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we have the Election Commissioner Gladys come up, bring some greetings.
Good afternoon. I actually serve as a dual citizen, so to speak, because I work for the mayor, but I also work for the Secretary of State, William Galvin. And I wanted to thank the mayor for appointing me to be co-chair of Springfield's Complete Count Committee. As a co-chair, though, I have been working over the past year with Yuri Molina, who's here from the Secretary of State's office, Kathy Molta from the Secretary of State's office, John Barr, who's also here, and we've been actually going and making sure that the streets in the city of Springfield are accurate, that we have an accurate listing for the census to begin the count. And we also have Shavina Martin from my office who's here. And going street by street in a city the size of Springfield can be complicated. It can be time consuming. I appreciate all the help and direction that we've gotten from not only the US Census, but from here, our partners locally, because it is important that we have this count to be accurate. Part of that is having the people who are here, so Springfield Neighborhood Housing Service, New North Citizens Council, because this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Springfield has changed over the past 10 years. I was part of the 2010 census count, and in that census count, there was no gas explosion. There was no tornado. We didn't have an MGM. We didn't have all of the new construction that we have now. The landscape has changed, and Springfield being a city of neighborhoods, really the third largest city in the state, but we're also small town. We all know each other or know people who know each other. So this count is extremely important. And as Representative Gonzalez said, the Latino community will be undercounted if we do not reach out to them, if we do not speak to them, if we do not make it okay for them to come out and say, we are here, we live in Springfield, we live in Massachusetts, we need to be counted so that we can be served by the dollars that Congressman Neal will bring back to Springfield. So this team behind me is going to make sure that we do the job, that Tom Ash and I are able to reach out to the community partners and really make it safe for people to come forward and say that they count. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we got Jeff from the Census office, and he's gonna give us some information. Come on, Jeff. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Jeff Baylor, Regional Director for the U.S. Census Bureau's New York office, one of 6 regions we have across the country responsible for all 2020 data collection activities. We are responsible for the state of Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, all the remaining New England states, and Puerto Rico. And I just want to say the census is now. While Census Day is until April 1st, 2020, the work we have to do is now. And there's two things that all of you can do. The first off has to do with jobs. Even though the census is a national event, in order to be successful, it has to be conducted at the local level. We have to hire people to work in their own communities. And we are recruiting right now. 2020census.gov/jobs is how you apply to census jobs. The majority of our jobs last 8 to 12 weeks. Here in Springfield, we'll be paying $18 an hour. And this can be a great second job. You don't have to quit your full-time job to work for us. You can work nights and weekends and be extremely successful. So please share the information that we are recruiting. We've already started hiring in Massachusetts. Hundreds of people are already employed by the U.S. Census Bureau for our first operation. We need to continue to build our recruiting pools, getting ready for the 2020 census. The second thing you can do is start the census conversation now, at your church, at your work, at dinner with your friends and family. Talk about the census, that it's safe, that the census is easy, and that the census is important. And you heard just some great remarks by our local leaders here, and it's an honor to be here with all of you today. So the census is safe. Every piece of data that the Census Bureau collects is protected by federal law, Title 13. It was put in place in the 1950s. It basically states, we cannot release any information at any time that identifies an individual or a household, period. Local, state, federal law enforcement cannot access our data. Homeland Security, Immigration Services cannot access our data. The Patriot Act does not supersede Title 13. So every piece of data that you give to the Census Bureau is protected. We cannot release anything that identifies an individual or a household, period. In addition, everyone who works on a census, this will be my third census, whether this is your first census, you take an oath of confidentiality. You take an oath of confidentiality for life, meaning if I release information, if any employee releases information that identifies an individual or a household, we can be imprisoned up to 5 years, fined up to $250,000. We take this seriously. The census is safe. Census is easy. You heard already. 4 ways to respond to the 2020 census. First time ever online. We're super excited about that. For the first time ever, we've always provided toll-free telephone support, but this will be the first time you can actually call your information over the phone if that's what you choose to do. And for those of you who filled it out on paper and always want to fill it out on paper, you'll have that opportunity as well. So those 3 ways we call self-response: over the phone, online, on paper. We don't have to knock on your door if you self-respond. So that's the message. We have to get the message out there. Go online, call it over the phone, or fill it out on paper. Both online and over the phone will be available in 12 non-English languages as well as English. So we're excited about that as well. Okay? So the census is easy. Finally, the census is important. You heard just the remarks earlier. I can't state any better. You look at our congressional representation is based upon census data. Electoral colleges, states use census data for their voting districts and school precincts. Over $675 billion of federal funding is disseminated every year based upon formulas using census data. We're talking about infrastructure, your roads, your schools, healthcare, Medicaid, National School Lunch Program. Anything that touches individuals in your community, I guarantee you it's tied to funding that uses census data. So it's extremely important. We get one chance every 10 years to get this right. And if people are missed, if people choose not to be counted, it's going to affect them, their family, their communities for the next 10 years. So we look forward to working together with all of you, with all our trusted voices here, in ensuring we get the most complete and accurate 2020 census. Thank you very much.
Can you just speak to the time when it starts in April and then
Yeah.
you have to speak to the time?
So regarding timeline, thank you. We will begin mailing out packages in mid-March of 2020. So in mid-March of 2020, the online systems will go live. The toll-free telephone numbers will have 12, well actually 13, one for every language. So if you speak Russian, You can call the Russian toll-free telephone number, and someone who speaks Russian will pick up the phone and answer your questions, and if you were to provide your information over the phone, you'll be able to do that. So mid-March is when we start sending out the packets, the information, okay? April 1st is Census Day. We need a reference point for all the data we're collecting, so we're asking who lives at this address as of April 1st of 2020, but you have the ability to fill it out as early as mid-March. The counting will continue through July, the end of July of 2020, beginning in May. In mid-May is when we're going to start knocking on doors. So you have from mid-March to mid-May to go online, to call it over the phone, to fill it out on paper and return it. If you haven't, we will come and knock on your door to ask the very same questions that are on that paper form, that are on the online application that you can provide over the phone. In addition, while we're knocking on doors, you still have the ability to self-respond. So you can continue to go online, call, fill out your paper form, and send it back while we're knocking on doors through the end of July 2020.
Thank you.
Yep.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that wraps up today. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Oh.
Her name's on there.
That's why we wear glasses, Paul. Oh, from Pioneer Valley. Oh, yeah, Allison. Come on, Allison. Sorry about that.
So I'm not an elected official or a politician, so I brought notes. But thank you all for being here. And my role, I work for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and I'm a co-chair of the Pioneer Valley Complete Count Committee, a volunteer committee organized by the PVPC who represents a diverse group of community leaders from government, public, private, and nonprofit sectors in the 43 cities and towns in Hampden and Hampshire counties, including Springfield. Our intention is to bring together stakeholders from across the region to create and implement strategies to help engage these hard-to-count communities that we've been hearing about today. Those living in rural areas, those for whom English is not their first language, recent immigrants and refugees, college students, those who don't have internet access, and other groups who are, for whatever reason, unlikely to fill out the 2020 census. Our members include social service organizations, small community groups, representatives from colleges and universities, and government representatives. We're working to create a network of trusted voices equipped with the knowledge of how the census works and why it is so important, who can directly connect with communities. So you've been hearing a lot about this trusted voices idea, and that's something that we're really attached to. Without a complete count, as you've been hearing, our region will miss out on the funds that keep our communities afloat. We're talking $1.6 billion in federal funding coming to the state of Massachusetts. Funding for housing, transportation, public health. The data collected during the census is also critical in helping nonprofits, governments, and foundations, businesses allocate funding, create strategic programming, and measure impact. But perhaps the most important in regards to a complete count is the impact that the census has on our political representation. Without a complete count, some of our most vulnerable communities may have their political voices stripped of them, and if the numbers gathered through the census don't accurately reflect reality. So members from our Complete Count committee working with some of the local Complete Count committees, I'm so happy to see Gladys today, and we've been working with some folks from Chicopee and Holyoke as well. We'll be attending events across the region over the next 10 months, so keep an eye out for us. We'll be tabling, we'll be giving presentations, we'll be making sure that information is widely available on the importance of the census. We encourage you to stop by our tables, spread the word, get involved in helping us ensure our communities are accurately counted. And if you'd like to get further involved in our work on a regional level or attend a Complete Count Committee meeting, please go to pvpc.org/2020 Complete Count. You can also reach out to me directly, and I'll be hanging around after this conference. So thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and that's going to wrap up the speaking part, but I just want to reiterate that I want to thank Chairman Marks again. We're chair and vice chair of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, not of Western Massachusetts, and we're about to take on an avenue of doing this all over the state as required. I just want to thank Speaker DeLeo for naming him chair and me vice chair. It's a very daunting task, but I think we're up to it. But we have a lot of work to do. We have to do the work and do the job. as the mayor said, if it goes below 150, we have problems. And with Mr. Trump in Washington ready to hammer cities, I think we're up for the task. So, Mr. Vice Chairman, I ask you to have, Mr. Chairman, I ask you to have the closing words. And certainly we'll be open for questions and answers after.
Great. No, I just thank everybody again for being here, for taking the time. All of the speakers today, you all did a great job. We all hit on a different point, but every single point made is extremely important, and I can't drive that home enough. So please make sure people get out there and get counted and make your voice heard. And a special thank you to my vice chairman, in only his second term appointed to this important of a position. It means a big deal. And again, it means a big deal for Springfield and for Western Massachusetts. So thank you very much.